Welcome to Pluto and Capricorn. I'm Chiron Phoenix, a neo-shaman practicing quantum true sky astrology, numerology, and sacred geometry. Every week, I do my best to help you on your journey of growth, self-discovery, and healing as we dive deep into the Plutonian age of Capricorn. Pluto is the planet of transformation, and Capricorn is about ambition, structures, and deep spirituality. As we get further into the current Pluto and Capricorn transit, we'll see more and more changes around belief systems, laws, and striving to become more authentic. These and many other changes will be at the forefront of this period. During this time, there will be a great need to develop practices that can facilitate the changes we all feel are needed. This podcast is here to introduce you to practitioners that work directly with their clients to help them on their journey. Now, let's embrace the Capricorn energy and dive deep into the sea of knowledge, and then climb like a goat to the mountaintop with a new perspective. This is Pluto and Capricorn.
This is the animal that's, to me, is connected to Pluto. And we talked a little bit about Pluto, and then next day I woke up and I had this huge fear of, oh my God, I spoke. I'm not allowed to speak, and it's way too dangerous to speak. I must have said something completely bad. I hope you will not share the video. And I was going bananas. And I've done a lot of regression and past life work,
Sure.
But that's all within the matrix.
Right.
It's all within that. And now I'm being connected to my original cosmic code. Now I feel this old past life coming up again.
All right, Frederieke, thank you so much for being here. So we've been talking a little bit off camera, and I just want you to kind of just tell us about who you are, where you're from, what it is that you do, and how you work with people.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a little bit of a surprise you asked me. I try not to do podcasts, and I've been asked once or twice. I have one in 2 weeks or so. I think I should do it. I think it's time. So thanks. It's cool.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. The work I do, I'm a professional, what I call regression, reincarnation therapist. I guess you guys call it past life regression therapist. And that's been my profession for 6-7 years now. And I also teach. So I also teach the masterclass Shamanism and Therapy for the students that become my colleagues. And I do quite a lot of workshops working with the Wheel of Life, and working with numerology also, teaching numerology. Yeah, and from doing all that, I kind of fell into the whole astrology thing through numerology, because numerology I was taught ended at 12, with the number 12, and he said something isn't right here. I want to know more about the 13. And my teacher said, no, this goes to 12, and 13 is 4, and so that kind of triggered something inside of me, and that led to a whole new study about the 13th while I had a visit of the Serpent. So that's in short how I came to astrology. So now I kind of merge astrology within my work, because my work is actually within the circle of 12, you could say. And doing the work, I'm helping people to connect to their 13. That's what I call their cosmic codes. And then after some sessions, the chart comes in and we look at the chart and we work from there. Yeah. So I guess that's it. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I love that. So when you're doing that, the wheel, how is that wheel set up? Because when I think of a wheel, a couple things come to mind. I think of a birth chart. I also think of the Wheel of Fortune on, not the game show, but in the tarot card. I think of
Mhm.
the Wheel of Fortune, and all these other ideas come to mind. So when you're working within this wheel, doing your work, what does that wheel look like, or what is it composed
Well, I actually work with the wheel in different ways. So I have the wheel in my mind. I know how the wheel of life works, how it
of?
looks
Okay.
like. So when I work with my clients, I have the numerology put on their wheel. That takes a lot of explanation probably, but that's one thing I do. What I also do is when I have groups, I create a wheel. I use rocks to ground the wheel, and I make a wheel like the medicine wheel with the directions or with the elements. And what I add to the wheel is actually things like my owl, or like this, the deer, or cards or stones. And I ask people to bring something personal that is important to them, whatever it is, as long as it fits, as long as it's not a car, but like jewelry or a picture. And they can place their personal object in the wheel. And I start to explain how the wheel works. So when your life starts, to what animal it is connected, and how your life develops, etc., till we finish the wheel. It's the karmic wheel. It's the matrix wheel, you could say. The wheel of 12. And
Sure.
what I then ask them to do, what's going on in their lives, if they have challenges, what I ask them to do is to work with their object. So I have them to sit near the object around the wheel, and I ask them what they feel at this point. And then I listen to the words, and I ask about the emotions, about the physical reaction, and then I have all the tools to regress them to maybe a past life, to an ancestor that has passed away, still has a message to share. So I basically work like family constellations within the wheel of life. And as soon as you start working it, you get this like multidimensional opening of, we call it awareness fields, dimensions, in where you can work and where a lot of information is. It's like healing circles. So that's also a way with working with the wheel of life.
And that makes a lot of sense. And when you're explaining that, and then how you just wrapped that up and said kind of like healing circles, that was what I started thinking. I was like, this is like an ancestral healing, almost like a healing of the lineage that got you, that created you and brought you to this present moment. You're working through kind of that trail that got you to here where you are. So does that make sense? Is that kind of how that looks essentially, or what that process is like?
Yeah, you can imagine we all have something that makes us feel stuck. This pattern that goes through the family from one generation to the other. And that means that somebody, if it's ancestral, didn't finish the life fully with full awareness. So there are things that are not dissolved, that are emotional stuff that isn't being shared, or secrets that are being kept, or trauma that isn't processed in the right way. So this ancestor passes away, but something isn't finished. Something isn't fully finished. So what happens, this ancestor, or we, if we work with several lives, we come back with whatever we haven't finished, and we go to the next cycle to work through it. Or we live with what the ancestor, we live with what the ancestor didn't really complete it. We carry it within our DNA. That's scientifically proven. We have the memory, the emotional memory of our grandparents and whatever, great grandparents. And it starts to open up in our life, starts to rule our life. And we don't feel like we can live our own life the way we would want to do it. The problem is, this is like the wheel that you're being stuck in, because we don't live through evolution connected to our essence, or as I told you, I call it lately the cosmic code. We don't live through our cosmic code. We live in, it's the word amnesia.
Sure, yeah,
We
like
forget.
forgetting.
Yeah, forget stuff. We create trauma. We experience trauma, and we keep doing this loop, you can see that there's trauma from World War II, for example, World War One, that shows up nowadays with my clients. And we're not supposed to do that. If we're supposed to live on this planet to beings that go through an evolution, let's say like a spiral going up, then we shouldn't get stuck in the same. This is where we are. So by doing this work, I try to contribute to become more aware of the fact that we're stuck and doing something we're not supposed to do. And we heal our trauma, and that gives us the opportunity to connect more to who we truly are. It's like everybody speaks about, I want to know who I am, I want to live who I am. But this is who you are. You live your trauma, you live your lives, the lives of your ancestors. You're nobody else. You're the one that's stuck in it. That's who you are. That's who you want to become. You want to become the one
absolutely.
you're truly, you want to live your true essence. So that's is
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And some of the things you're saying are just like making these sparks, like these light bulbs go off in my head, like, okay, yes, like I've actually talked about something like that with people, or this has came up, and it's tying a lot of things together for me in my mind. And it makes me think of some of the stuff that we were talking about again off camera, was we were talking about how that ties into astrology. Because for me, when you're explaining these codes, like a cosmic code, that initially right then makes me go astrology, because something that I've been transitioning to calling the charts that I create for people, because I create these hand done charts that show a true representation of the sky, even with the space between constellations and how some of them overlap, showing that specifically, and showing kind of that real, actual, if you looked up, this is what it looks like, but now here it is represented on paper. This is a basic, like a graph of the sky, essentially in a circular form. And I've been starting to call them like incarnation portals, where basically this is a portal that you incarnated through. So kind of sounds like the cosmic code. It's like, this is your code, this is your map, this is your blueprint of your incarnation, of the light that incarnated you, and the memory within that, and whatever the case may be. So what you're explaining makes me think of astrology and how that ties into astrology. Yeah. So for you, when you're doing this work, have you always incorporated astrology? Because I know that that's something that you do now. Has astrology always been a part of it, or did that come in later?
That definitely came in later. If you look back, it's super interesting how everything developed. So basically, I started to do like a year of shamanism. Then I decided I want to be a therapist. I want to work with ancestral healing, regression therapy and stuff. So I did that also for 2-3 years. Then I also did numerology, because the numerology I was being taught was actually of the Wheel of Life. It's created by a Spanish shaman, Sambiat, and you don't find any books of it. There's no book of it. As far as I know, no books. What do you call it? It's being told.
In oral tradition or
oral tradition. And that was the numerology of 12. So I work as a regression reincarnation therapist with numerology of 12. That makes sense, because the numerology of 12 is speaking about trauma and the matrix kind of created life that we're living in. And I was always asking myself, but what about the 13? I want to know about the 13. Because the 13, I know it's not bad luck, it's death and rebirth. So why do we stop at 13? No, it goes to 12, and then 1 and 3 is 4. And so when I started to teach numerology itself with permission, I added 13. And I thought, well, where is the 13? So I said, I have this cycle of 12. That's the matrix we live in. So the 13 must be around it. That came to me. So that's how I teach it. Like the 13 is like let's say the ethers that connects the dimensions, the cosmic realm, with the manifestation of the lives and of us in bodies and everything. So I kind of made it up. I didn't really make it up. That's how it appeared to me that was right. Something I felt.
Right.
Okay, if I teach it like this. Yeah. And if I have new wisdom about it, I will teach my new wisdom. But so far I know it's like this. So this is how I teach it. And I always say, don't believe me. You can listen to it and see if it makes sense to you. That's how I teach.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
then I got into the number 13 because I couldn't let it go. Kind of wanted to know. I don't know. I couldn't. It got to me. Like, what is this with 13? Why do I feel it's so important? And it went on for 2-3 years, and sometimes I read something about it and I forgot about it again, but it popped up every time. And during the time, I was having some troubles with a serpent that was coiled up in my stomach. Is it okay to tell the story?
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay.
I would love to hear
Cool. It's a black serpent, very shiny, glimmery, with red eyes. And I didn't know it was a serpent there, but I had moments in this whole transformation process I was actually going into, like this big awakening process through the study of shamanism and numerology. And what happened is I felt sometimes I had to kind of vomit, throw up, but there was nothing coming out. It was like energy, and I could see it. It's like dark energy, and I didn't understand what it was. And it kept going on for months. And at one point I was sick of it. And I was like, okay, if it comes up, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to see. I decided it. I'm going to see what it is. And then you see how strong intention is. If you have the intention, you're determined. And there's no other outcome than I'm going to see it. I see it. So I felt it coming up, closed my eyes, and it scared the hell out of me because it was this black serpent with its red eyes. And it was like, I have to get out. It has to get out. So I tried to pull it out, and and it didn't work, and it got back in, and that was going on for another couple of months. And I thought, this isn't good. So I started to find out what the whole story of a serpent was. And then you read stuff from the Bible, and it's all bad. I wasn't sure. This serpent was definitely not cool. So at one point I thought, I have to talk to it. So I have to ask, like, what the hell do you want from me? The word hell is interesting too in this perception. What do you want from me? And at the moment I started communicating it to the serpent, it became this green cobra, beautiful, still a little scary with this yellow eyes. And I said to me, if you want to know, come with me. That scared me. So I said, I don't know. So I took some time to meditate and to ask my guides if it was okay or not. They gave me green lights. So I said, okay, the next time I feel like it's coming up, I'm going to say, okay. So when it came up again, I felt really sick and I felt this dark stuff wanted to come out. I let it come up and then I said, okay, I'm gonna go with you. And I swallowed it and with my eyes closed, and within a split second I went through this whole tunnel that went, I don't know if it was an incarnation or an excarnation tunnel, like going into life or leaving life, but it was like a big tunnel, and it went with the speed of light. And I went through the universe, and then at one point I saw many lives to the left, to the right. I saw all these lives passing by. And the serpent had said to me, I'll bring you to where everything began. And then I saw all these lives and I thought, wait a minute. There's a good life and there's a bad life. There's a good life, there's a bad life, and I'm in the middle. So I'm neutral. On this perspective of the trip with the serpent, all the lives that I had lived were not important. I didn't have to look at it as like good or bad. I just had to know they were there. So plus and minus, black and white, became neutral in the middle. And I kind of understood. So unity is the plus of the good and the bad. It's the merging of the both, like the masculine and the feminine, right?
Right.
And I went all the way, and then suddenly everything stopped. The speed of light stopped after I had this awareness. And there was just light. And it was super bright light, and it was a place of huge love. You've heard people talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, this is an illusion, because then this priestess figure showed up. And I thought, oh my God, somebody's tracking me, But it was overwhelming. And this Jesus kind of person said to me, this is where it all began. This is where you begin. And I broke into tears. It broke me completely, because it was like the good and the bad, the black and the white. It was melted into a neutral space, and it came into light, and there was just love. There was nothing else. And then I opened up my eyes and was like, okay, And then I thought, okay, this is what the serpent tries to tell me. It's like a spirit that tries to show me. So what I did, I Googled 13 plus serpent.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I found the serpent bearer. And that's how I saw the video of Isaac with Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the long video of 1.5 hours or so, where Isaac explains everything about the serpent. And I was listening to it. And of course, I've been Googling and reading stuff. And I was listening to it and I was like, it's just explaining in 1.5 hours what took me years in meditation, in being feeling sick, and working with the 13. And I didn't read so many books, of course, but, you know, I was like, okay. So then I booked a reading. I think it took another half year or so. Then I booked a reading. And he explained to me who I was. He explained my work, and he didn't know anything, but he explained that I work in ancestral healing work, the whole feminine shamanism code within my cosmic codes. I was born with a Merkaba. And that made sense because I had no idea, but if you're born with a Merkaba, you have a certain remembrance of things. And I always had a certain remembrance. That's why I knew I had to work with a 13. And that's then more other stuff also, of course. But yeah, that's basically it. And then I thought, okay, so now I know my chart, but I want to read my own chart. I want to know how I can read my own transits. That, you know, that's what happens when you get it. And everything started to vibrate within me. It's just, you know, when I saw my own cosmic code, everything started to vibrate. So then I studied with him, and we ended up working together. And that's how it goes. So now it's part of my, but this is like from the last 2 years. I think I'm doing readings for a year and a half now.
Wow. That is an absolutely amazing story.
Yeah.
And on top of it being amazing, it just makes so much sense with what that serpent bearer represents, and with the healing and the energy associated with that divine wisdom aspect of it. It's just so important and so lost and overlooked. And it's been really, I think, just suppressed for some reason. Almost an intent to keep us in this current like matrix so that we don't understand who we really are and what we're actually really capable of. And I feel like that has been something that holds people back a lot. Have you found that helps people kind of break out of that and see who they really are in the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. You know, with this whole journey I had, I realized I'm actually working in the matrix. I'm doing the work in the matrix, work with the karmic wheel of life. And I was a little bit shocked. I was like, I don't want that. And then I thought, no, this is exactly where I have to be. Because if there's so much suppression, so much, we forget so much, we are so distracted by fear and trauma, we have to peel it off like an onion first before all our protections, shields, and everything gone, you know, and we have all these little pieces of souls that are in past lives and with our ancestors that are still stuck. We have to get them back and integrate them. Then we're kind of whole enough to actually understand the vibration of your true cosmic alignment, the cosmic code. And if I've seen it. I read a chart for somebody who is kind of heard it and think it's cool, and they're kind of overwhelmed, and they feel something is right, but not really ready to grasp the whole thing. But I also see with clients that have done their process therapy with me years ago that now show up. They want to read, want to have this chart read by me or by Isaac, what we do together. They are able to really feel the vibration. And 9 out of 10 sent me an email like, you know what, after this, I'm suddenly dealing differently with stuff. Suddenly some doors are opening. I suddenly make a decision I was afraid to make. Not even because of certain transits, just because, and the most important thing they say, and that I sense, is that it's almost that they're finally allowed to live who they are. Because they have a scientific paper and reading on video that actually says, this is who you are. So why try to be someone
Right.
else? And that to me is so amazing. That's how I felt it too, as if I had permission to actually be the person I am. Because if you live within the suppression of the matrix, you're not allowed to be in your divine essence, or to at least try to work with it. And when you have your chart read, you see, but this is who I am, and you're allowed to live your code. And you're also allowed to have difficulties if you have like a mystic square or some big T-square stuff going on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And that's another thing that I have found too, when I look at certain charts for people, especially for myself, when I learned all about this true sky system and saw that what I thought I wasn't really according to what was in the sky and what it looked like at the time of my birth. Now, of course, I was born in the middle of the night, so what I saw in the sky was actually, no planets. There were no planets in the sky at the time that I was born. I have a bowl in my chart, and like from the first house to the fourth house, everything is down there, first house to fourth house. It's all right down there, and actually has the 13th sign of Fucus right there in the center of it all. It's like right there in the middle, and everything is split from to the sides of it. And I have then Chiron is the only other thing that's like a major thing that's looked at that was actually up in the sky, that was up in Aries. So when I looked at that and compared it to what I had thought originally my chart was, showing that I was my tropical, showing that I was a Capricorn, I realized, wait a second, what my actual sky was and what my real chart shows, it makes much more sense with who I am as a person. And I understand that for so long, with a narrow view of astrology, really looking at, horoscopes and just kind of playing around with it and not being serious about it and not researching it or studying it, just kind of messing around with it, thinking, oh, I want to do this. It's interesting. Like, oh, I'm a Capricorn. Like, okay, so that means like I like to set goals and work hard and, do that stuff. And then when I really sat and thought about it after I found like this true sky system, I went, wait a second. I don't do any of that stuff like that. I'm not really into that. I'm not the hard worker, determined, like I love seeking out knowledge and traveling and exploring and finding truth and uncovering ancient wisdom. And that's all the stuff I'm really interested in. And I went, it makes so much more sense that my sun moon, I was born on a new moon, that they're actually Sagittarius. It's like, that makes so much more sense because that is the seeking knowledge and loving philosophy and things like that. And I was like, whoa, I just feel like I cracked out of this like crazy matrix shell that I was in. And now that gave me the power and the real ability to actually embrace my true self, who I really feel like and who I am, to then pursue that and to really fully dive deep into that. And I was so not really deep into, but so connected to and personally identified with and attached to that tropical version, that Western astrology version, that I literally had like a cognitive dissonance to attach myself to that and identify with it. So much so that just like 4 years ago, I went and had my whole arm tattooed, and it's hard to see, but this is a Capricorn. This is a sea goat going up my arm. So it has the scales down here and water, and it went all the way up, and I have the horns that go up over my shoulder and a goat head right here. And I did all this stuff as, oh, I'm a Capricorn. And now after all this, I've decided that this whole thing is going to get turned into a big dragon sleeve. It's an easy conversion.
Wow.
So I'm doing a dragon. And that's a lot of my interpretation of kind of the serpent energy as it fully ascends and fully awakens, that the serpent, it grows wings and it grows legs and it breathes fire, and now it's a fully fledged highest power serpent. And that's kind of how I saw that and broke out of that. Again, like I call it, and like you referred to it, it's that matrix of belief of having to be something and live in this system that doesn't feel authentic. So what you're explaining, how that happened with you and people that you've worked with, it resonates so much with me that I understand, like, that is what doing that work actually does for you. It makes you and gives you the opportunity to really be yourself. And looking at those cosmic codes and that chart, that real chart of yours, you can see like, oh, this explains so much. This is like my blueprint. This is like my cosmic DNA. And that's really interesting to think about that. And I'm also wondering, in the work that you do, when you are looking now and seeing this astrology and looking at those cosmic codes, are you seeing within that at all how that connects to somebody's ancestral lineage or trauma or memories that they carry? Do you see that in a chart sometimes with people?
Yes, but mostly I accidentally say something. You gotta know my chart, but I don't always speak from my person. So especially when I read a chart, and I prefer to do charts with people online. It's live.
Yes.
Because then I look at them and I speak them and I say some words, and then when I hear their sound, the vibration of their voice, this connects me with their, let's say, their morphogenetic fields. So it doesn't always happen. Depends on the person, depends on the chart. But if there's a lot of channeling stuff going on in the chart, that's very easy for me to plug into. That goes by itself. And then I say, most people cry when I do the reading. Sorry, guys. Because then I say something and it just hits exactly the right spot. And yeah, that happens, that people kind of, and sometimes they just have this image, and then I know that's like a past life. Sometimes an ancestor shows up. We talk a little bit about it, but I'm not doing regression therapy while I have a chart, while I have a reading, but we can point it out. Sometimes they come to the practice. We work on it, but it's most of the time it's visible. Yeah. And you know what I wanted to say, because you explained it also really well and beautifully how it works for you. And then I thought, yeah, but once you know, you cannot know. So once you understood your chart and you see it and you get kind of the permission to be who you are, that also comes sometimes with challenges, or like big challenges. And you start, if you really get it, you start to feel the transits and you start to feel the vibration. It's like a big responsibility to live it. If I had my chart read like 4 or 5 years ago, I would not have been ready. I think it was 4 years, maybe a little bit long back. But for me personally, I would have been ready, because this is a nice example to explain. When you look at my personal chart, there's like this, I have Pluto in an aspect with Mercury and Venus conjunct Fucus. So that's like strong, shamanic, cosmic communication, deep transitions. And my Pluto was in my first house. So when I started studying, and I had my chart read by Isaac, and I started studying with him, and I entered some of the live class, and I had to stay up at night because I live in a different time zone.
Right.
And we had this episode about Pluto. Now, this is the animal that to me is connected to Pluto. And we talked a little bit about Pluto, and then next day I woke up and I had this huge fear of, oh my God, I spoke. I'm not allowed to speak, and it's way too dangerous to speak. I must have said something completely bad. I hope you will not share the video. And I was going bananas. And I've done a lot of regression and past life work.
Sure.
But that's all within the matrix.
Right.
It's all within that. And now I'm being connected to my original cosmic code. Now I feel this old past life coming up again. And so I had a conversation with Isaac about it. And he said, let me look at your chart. And he said, it's this witch that was burned. And I'm so afraid. And she's back. And I thought I worked through it. No, I worked through it. How can she come back and fear me so much, scare me so much, that part of me? Because I worked through it. I did so much work on it. I'm fine. I can speak in groups. It's fine. Why now speaking about Pluto? The owl, that's one of my biggest totems. Why does it bring me back to being so scared again? And then he opened up my chart and he said, but you are the witch in this life too. Don't you know? I
Mm-hmm.
explained to you, look, you're light bringers working with Pluto. Deep feminine shamanic work. And I was so relieved because I thought, oh, wait a minute. I am trying to push this back. So I've done that work. It's gone. And mostly it's the case. When you work with reincarnation in past life, that's over. You don't have to repeat it in this life. Just work with what you lost in this life. And no, but you are. So if I do it differently back then, and I'm sure they won't burn me, then I'm fine. So again, I had the permission, especially from my Frisian background, because I'm from the Frisian tribe. I'm Dutch, but I'm actually Frisian. In the Frisians, they had what we call tunsters. And a tunster is a wizard. It's a shaman.
Okay.
And it's a seer. And then it all fell into place. Oh, okay. So I can reconnect with the Frisian tunster, with the Frisian seer and shaman in this life. I can bring that back. And my light bringers are in the 4th house with Fucus. So that's about the ancestral lineage, it's about the tribes. So even when you've done so much work that I've done, as soon as I started to work with my own cosmic code, I had to face it again. Now I had to face it again because I was leaving the matrix at that part, in that perspective. And then you get these echoes of the love. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's really interesting. I was just thinking because you mentioned that you have Pluto in the 1st house, and that made me think. And I was like, wait a second. I think I'm pretty sure that I have that same thing. And I had to look real quick at my chart, and I was like, yeah, I do have Pluto in the 1st house. Pluto in the 1st house in Virgo is what my chart shows.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
So what you and
Very
I do.
interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting because what you and I do, that's why we connect easily, I guess, is we reinvent ourselves all the time. It's what Pluto does. It breaks down because it wants to open up the truth. It's like the owl that looks into the dark and reveals what's hidden. Like Virgo, she brings from the ether, she brings into manifestation, into life, into a physical body or into a form. And if it's from the purest sense, it's through pure love intention, wanting to create something that's visible and tangible. So what we do is we break ourselves down every time, transform ourselves, and bring ourselves back into a new form. I always call this like the shedding. It's what a serpent does, shedding of the skin. And it's like reinventing yourself, reinventing a new form, a new way within the physical body that you have, or within the personality that you have. So, but that goes also, I don't know if you recognize this, but I can't really help it, and you can't help it too if it happens. But when you're interacting with people, you just shine light on the stuff that's in the dark. If you want it or not, because you are Pluto. Like, you are the owl, I am the owl. And I do it through love, but I can be very perfectionistic, critical, and organized to do this, That's hard because people don't always want you to do it. But you don't do it on purpose. It's the energy that you have. Because you do it with yourself too. You reinvent yourself. And that's what people see in the mirror. Because that's how we work. By interacting, we mirror each other. That's how we know who we are, because of the mirror of you. So yeah, Pluto is a tough cookie.
Yeah, that makes so much sense when you word it like that, because that happens to me all the time. Whenever I get into deep conversation with somebody, not even trying to do something that's a reading or looking into things or whatever it may be, I find that we always end up at a place where I'm getting them to look at an area where they've had some type of a trauma, or going back to this emotional memory that they didn't realize that they even had, that all of a sudden brings up all of these different emotions and tears and understanding of like, oh, this is why this affects me this way. And this is what happened back before I even had a conscious memory that had happened, that it was something, like in childhood or something like that, where this traumatic thing happened and then it kind of got blocked out for the rest of their life. But then they go back and look at it and they're like, that's why I am this way. And it's painful, and it hurts, and it's also at the same time necessary. And I found that was another reason that bringing this information that I'm doing here, and right now Pluto being in Capricorn, was a big inspiration for me to kind of start doing this and bringing this information out. And then also looking at my chart and understanding some of my placements, like with my midheaven and my north node and my south node and all these different things. And that my north node is conjunct my midheaven and just all these weird things like that. And I was like, this is all telling me to tell this story and share this information and bring people together to get all this out there so that people can hear truth and understand things at a deeper level. That's all in an effort to help healing and to help people overcome traumas. And that was when the whole, even my name that I've chosen to use, the Chiron Phoenix name, is all about healing and death and rebirth. Like, that's what it's all about. Healing through death and rebirth is Chiron Phoenix. Like, it's all symbolic of what my new purpose and mission has been over the last few years, and why I've done so much of the research that I've done, and why I enjoy so much talking to the people like yourself that are doing the same type of work and really being in service to people to help facilitate that healing for people to live their authentic lives. So I think it's absolutely beautiful, and I love bringing that together. And I love the synchronicities that I see with things like having that Pluto in the first house and what that means. Like, it's like, that's magical. That's like real magic happening right before your eyes, and not even knowing, having no idea beforehand that that's the case. And then it just comes out, and it's like, oh, like, okay, here we see magic in the making. Like, this is exactly why this stuff works. It's so unbelievable.
That's why I said yes to a podcast, I guess.
That's exactly right. I looked into it, and I was like, wait, my north node is in Gemini, 10th house, conjunct my midheaven. And I looked into that, and I was like, this is all about public image and sharing information and getting like the details out there and things like that. And I was like, whoa, that's okay. Yes, I will do it. Mission accepted. Like, okay, let's do it. And you know, in the beginning, it was very intimidating and scary, kind of like, you know, you were saying, experiencing all of that over again. Like, I'm kind of experiencing it all again. Like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But then I thought about it, and I was like, you know, in my past, in my early adulthood, my first job was in sales, and I stayed in a career of sales, and I've always been, you know, talking to people and in front of people and doing that, and kind of having this, always being out in front of people and speaking to people. And when I used to be involved in a church, I would give a lot of talks and speak a lot and be like a leader of groups and things like that. And I was like, that just seems to be kind of where I end up at. That seems to be my path. And it made so much sense when I learned what my true sky was, my true chart. And I was like, well, there you go. There's my incarnation portal. There's where my light, my energy came from. And it's just trying to burst out and trying to come through it all these times. But I was almost suppressing that myself by being within this whole matrix that we're in, of not really seeing the truth about ourselves. And once I let that go and moved away from it and realized that doesn't work, is when things started to change. And now there's movies and stuff coming out, and other groups that I'm working with that are just, all these things have started to open up like a lotus. It's just, it's beautiful. And
beautiful. Huh? Yeah. Sounds amazing.
It's just beautiful. Yeah. Things are really happening. So it's great to see that. And it's all part of this understanding the true, like you said, cosmic codes of who I actually am. And now my next step has been starting to research some of my ancestral roots and figuring that out, and where some of this stuff comes from, and seeing how that ties into it, and learning where a lot of this original ancient tribal information came from and was first being used and how it was used, to try to understand that better so that I can try to bring that out of myself as well. So that's why it's very interesting to me, the work that you do with, different tribal leaders and wisdom keepers, because they hold on to so much of that information, not just intellectually from learning it through their life, but through, again, probably through their cosmic coding that they have through their ancestral lineage. And what we were talking about off air before, with your name and about how it relates to lineage, is part of that coding also that's in there. And that's really interesting. So I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit so people kind of know what we're talking about when it comes to that.
Yeah, I can explain a little bit about it. So my last name is van der Lijn in Dutch, Frederieke van der Lijn. And if I would translate it, it's from the line or from the lineage. And well, the interesting thing is, if you look at my birth chart, as I said, I have Mercury and Venus, the light bringers, in the fourth house in Galactic conjunct Galactic center. So the fourth house is about family, lineage. And that makes a square to my Pluto in the first house. So that's dark feminine work. It's like so if you look at my ancestry, the Frisian tribe, there used to be, if you go way back, the time of Atlantis, maybe even before, we used to be wizards. So we used to work with the elements and bend air and time travel. And that was like the gifts that we had. We lived in a much higher energy. So we were using wizards, witchcraft. I don't like to use the word witch because it's connected to the burnings. Nowadays I say nature man, working with nature. So I'm from the Frisian lineage. And in 2019, I started to create a podcast. I was the first woman in the Netherlands and the first one who was doing this with about ancestral work and everything. And I call it, if I translate it to your language, I call it ancient wisdom through awareness. And my symbol was the owl. And I started with it on the 12th of March, and on the 11th of March, I saw the news, and I never watched news, but somehow I saw the news, and I heard there was a worldwide pandemic. And I thought, and I looked at my owl, and I said, you are going to reveal stuff. That's why I do this podcast. Why this pandemic suddenly worldwide shows up. And the podcast was about ancestral work, ancestral healing work. And one of the wisdom keepers I'm connected with, that's a whole another story who he is. I'm not going to go into that right now, but he told me, yeah, but your last name has to do with the lineage. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the family lineage. I said, yeah, you are connecting the lines. You're reconnecting the lineages through tribes, through ancestral work, and I really didn't see it and understand it. But it turned out, when Isaac read my chart, he said, oh, you work in ancestral lineage, you do some kind of healing work there. And I was like, yeah, that's my profession. How do you know? It's in your chart. And recently, one of my friends said, did you realize that your name has more to do with the ley lines than with something else? I said, no, it has to do with the family lineage, and it has to do with the line oil, because my great grandfather at 1500 something, he was working on a mill, and he used the line seed to get the lion oil out. That's where the word line comes from. That's the story.
Sure.
And then I spoke to you, and you said, the ley lines are connected to your name also. So somehow this seems to be kind of something that I have to accept, that my name has to do with something with family lineages. Yeah. And you said it in a really nice way. I kind of forgot. I think I blocked it again. You said something about ley lines. Yeah, different tribes and cultures using the ley lines to build their monuments, monumental ritual places and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So throughout ancient times and even modern times, even like now in places with ley lines, you have people that, go dousing there, and you find natural energy spots there, and vortexes like here in Arizona, up in Sedona, are very well known vortex areas, and they're all long ley lines. And You know,
Mhm.
the pyramids are built along ley lines, and so many ancient peoples just had a natural ability to sense those ley lines. And some of the most important work that they did and structures they built are all along those ley lines.
Mhm.
And these high concentrations of energy in these areas carry a blueprint with them, or not a blueprint, but they carry a memory of the tribal people, the ancestors and the
Yeah.
lineages of those people. So, you know, an ancestral lineage is directly connected to ley lines, because those are the areas that ancient people would go to and would commune at and
Mhm.
do rituals and ceremonies and offerings and share their oral histories. And that's the area where they connected with the energy of Earth, where
Mhm.
it would be most likely that those cosmic codes would carry into the ether and into, you know, if you want to call it the Akashic records, so that when people incarnate, they get those codes with them, or when you connect to that, you download that information, and it's most likely going out into that or down into it, whatever the case may be, through those
Mhm.
areas of energy, those natural ley lines that our planet produces with its magnetic field and the way it rotates and kind of all those things going
Yeah.
on. So yeah, I think it definitely is connected to ley lines. I think those are it's a double meaning. They're the same thing. So it makes a lot of sense that you would have that in your coding, being from that lineage of people, having that connection. It just makes so much sense that
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, and it's right there.
And it's true, and it then has a whole. There's a bigger story about it. So while you also talk about it, like I've Jupiter in a Fucus, so as soon as you start to talk, I see like 100,000 connections, in information. Like, oh, stop, guys, I have to. But the thing is, I have like sometimes I get a blank on it, and I know exactly what it is. That's my Mercury.
Mm,
Especially now, I wrote it to you. I have this Mercury square Neptune. It's a long transit, and I have this fog all the time. So I'm doing pretty good right now, but I have like these moments that there's just a big fog and I can't see it anymore. And it's interesting because the whole work in the lineage has to do with the placement of my Mercury. And that's like the planet I find a little bit hard. So to me, Mercury is like the crow. It's like
mm,
smart, quick learning, curious. When you see a crow and you look at them, you straight away think that crow knows more than me.
mm-hmm,
That crow is observing me more than I'm observing the crow. It's like that's this magical bird, and I know that the crow is like the keeper of the true, of the secret knowledge, of the secret books of the universe.
mm-hmm.
And it only showed me one page. And I haven't, it only showed me one thing yet. But I know Mercury, as I see it as the crow, is for me still a bit like a mystery. And that means I'm not ready yet to work with it completely. So, yes, makes sense, right? So, because this is how it works with totem animals. When they show up, doesn't mean they tell you you're here, but then it can take years before you're ready to work with them. And you can't pick them, they pick you. And so when you talk about it, I just feel like I have moments of going a little bit blank. I hear what you say, but it doesn't, somehow I don't get the comprehension of it. And I know why, because I have to take the steps, because I know Mercury, like Crow, they can go really fast in their thinking because they're smart. And I will try to outsmart the universe goal with me, the mission I have, the code I have.
Sure.
So
Right.
I have to be patient. So I feel that this is going on. But it's interesting because the crow is showing up more and more. And what's also interesting to talk about from this lineage, this ley line, is that I'm from Frisian origin. I told you a little bit about it when we talked before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
And the Frisians, that's an ancient tribe. They go way back before Atlantis around that time. And they lived in Scandinavia, like on the coastline, the north of Germany, the whole coastline, what is now the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. And when Doggerland was still there, the continent that's now underwater,
Mm-hmm.
we just used to walk overland through England and Ireland. The Frisians, they built mounds in the early times. And the story is They built mounds because the water was flooding the land. But they were sea travelers too. They were navigating by the stars, so they were not afraid of water, but they built the mounds to keep themselves safe. But I'm convinced these mounds were also used for, like you said yourself, for rituals, ceremonies, gatherings. And the most important mounds were built on ley lines. And what has been discovered by a friend of mine, I think about 15 years, maybe longer, years ago, that these mounds are like direct copies of constellations. And in the city of the Netherlands, we have the constellation of Leo. So the main city of our province, Friesland, is the city of Leeuwarden. It's translated in your language as the lion's mount. So the mount of the lions, the way of the lion is how we translate it. And the villages around have also little mounds. And if you draw them out on a map, you can put the constellation of Leo on it perfectly.
Wow.
So the Frisians knew about the constellations and about the energy of the constellations. I'm also Leo rising sign.
Okay. Yeah.
Just realized that. Leo rising.
Yeah.
And then I discovered something more because I thought, so what does the amounts mean? What does it mean when I go back so many lives back as a Frisian? What do these mounts mean? And I was just sitting on a mount, like in a visualization. And then I laid down and I thought, oh, I get it. So when we die, we go lay on the mount because then it's the connection to the stars.
Yeah, right.
And I spoke in my Frisian language, which is my first language, and I said, ik ster. Ster means, if you translate it to Dutch, I die. But the word ster is the true translation is star. So I star. I don't die, I star. And somehow we created it into dying. I don't know why, but ik ster means I star. And I said, oh my God, we knew we are not dying. We knew we go back, we return. We just let our physical vehicle go.
Right.
We go back.
Right.
And then I realized again, like words, language, it holds a lot. It holds a lot of more meaning than we understand. And that's why it's so important for me to speak Frisian, because and I feel grounded and home, and so
yeah.
I'm a Frisian and I speak English and Dutch, and then I speak English and German, and now so I have to translate a couple of times when I speak to you.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. But yeah, there's definitely so much meaning in words, and that's what you just explained is absolutely beautiful, because that really is how we work. We're of the stars, we're from the stars, we are stars. We are a light within a body, and that's what we are. We are light. We are the light, and the light is stars. That's the original form of light, and for a long time was the only form of light was stars. And I think a lot of people take for granted too, kind of how we were discussing, people play around a little bit with these spiritual concepts or mystical or esoteric type things. And one of the things I've realized is a lot of people just take for granted even the sun. They think of the sun like, oh, it's just the sun. And it's like, well, that's actually it's a star. We're just very close to it. And sometimes the things that you're closest to, you take the most for granted. And I think that we underestimate the power of the stars, and especially combining that with some of the science that we're getting now in today's modern society with like quantum physics, and understanding that there is this connection, that there is this non-separation, that actually everything is all one big united thing, and that separation is just a matter of perspective, that we're only seeing things from a perspective that seems to be separated, even though the separation is really just an illusion. And we lose our connection with the stars because they're so far away that we feel disconnected. But then the sun is so close that we feel disconnected because we take it for granted. But
Right.
we
Right.
really are light. We are stars. Everything was created from the stars. And so that's beautiful how that language automatically just carries with it through the translations what
Yeah.
that means. It's just beautiful how it just carried right through, and it tells you the wisdom of our ancestors and how much they
Really.
knew. And then it makes you start to wonder, why is that lost so much nowadays? Why do people not know that or remember it or have to search for it to find it? What happened to that information, and what's responsible for that?
Well, that's what I was thinking about exactly. Like, I'm 52. It took me about 50 years to understand that just that one word. That's how blocked off we are. The word that I've been speaking my whole life is when I was a little girl, we talked about the stars. So we talked about the stern. But we also know that word is dying. But that's not what it is. It took me 50 years to understand it, to have that epiphany. Like, wait a minute. So I was super happy. I realized it. And then the second thought was, what happened? That I didn't even know the meaning of my own language. That's
Yeah.
and that's also something. I don't know if you know this feeling from earlier or even now, but I would walk around at night, taking the dog out, whatever, looking up, and I felt homesick. When I looked up to the stars, it felt so homesick. Since I know my cosmic code, it's gone. I'll feel grateful. I'm like, hey guys, are you all okay? I'm doing great. Sometimes I'm not, but it's a different conversation. I used to walk around and call out like, can you guys get me? And now I look up and I'm like, oh wow, the little time that I have here, I want to make it as an amazing time of discovery. And because I'm planning to travel a lot more, and now we talked about the ley lines, where I have some kind of a blank. I also understood while you and I were talking just now, like, oh, that's why I need to travel. That's why I need to travel to all those places, because I have the experience when I go to certain places where the energy is strong, I can read the land or I can read the place. The information just shows up, tells me what it needs or what it wants or what has happened there. And just because you were explaining me why ley line is connected to me as the second or third person who's trying to go make it clear, today it kind of hit me. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're
Now
welcome.
I understand why I want to travel, why I need to travel. I have Saturn in a nice house, so I need to be the traveling teacher, or I have to learn from traveling. I have to understand what it is to be in a physical body and not just travel through meditation or whatever way. I have to do that. So thank you, because I just felt it pop into my system. Okay, so there's again an integration. So thanks.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm happy. I'm happy to help, and this is kind of another one of those situations, like I was saying, that these things just kind of happen sometimes when I have conversations with people, not trying to. It's just kind of, I guess, part of my cosmic code, and that could be related to my Mercury third house Sagittarius, is I'm all about communication and communicating like knowledge and wisdom and philosophy and things like that. That's just in there of relaying that information and teaching and doing that stuff. So it kind of just comes out for me even when I'm not necessarily trying. I'm just thinking about things, and it's like it just comes out. Things I feel like just come down and like, all right, got to say it. So I love when that happens, because I can see so many times with people that it kind of hits and lights up, and they go, oh, like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so that's beautiful to hear and reassuring for me, and helps me kind of again look at my own chart, my cosmic code, and be like, oh yeah, yep, there it is. Makes sense. Like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And it gives me the approval and the permission, like we were discussing before, to do those things. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think if you go and plug yourself in, like a USB getting plugged into a computer, all of a sudden it can transfer this information. So I think if you go plug yourself into those ley lines, being a person that's of the line and of the lineage,
Yeah.
you're going to get
Yeah.
downloads and uploads and all kinds of stuff going on that will help you do more of that healing work for people. So I think that would be a beautiful thing to do. It'd be so beneficial.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, I always look at names, right? When I get a chart of someone, I look at the names, and the names say a lot too. Yeah, so now while you're talking again, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it, because my first name has, of course, a certain meaning, and with my second name, that's an interesting combination too. So that's also something that people can look at. Like, your name is how I see it. Your name is an invitation to live up to it. So you get the name has the vibration that's connected to you. So you're invited to live up to the meaning of the name. I just love that. I mean, if your name means make war, then maybe that's not the best way to do it. But there's always something in it that you can use, you know. And sometimes you see it back in the charts. So that's the meaning of somebody's name. You see it back in the chart.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
It's super
Yeah,
interesting
that makes
to
a lot
look
of
at.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these things that are so connected, you know, it just speaks again to there's connection between all of these things. And I think when
Yeah.
people see those and when they open themselves up to seeing that stuff, and it allows them to really embrace that and be their true selves. And that's a beautiful thing. And now it has me thinking about how, because you brought up before a little bit of the numerology,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm curious how that works together with the ancestral work, the astrology, how that numerology comes into play, or how you utilize that within the work that you do also.
Yeah, I can explain that. So it's important to know I work with numerology that I learned from somebody who learned it from a Spanish shaman woman, Rosa Sambia. She created this numerology, or maybe somebody taught her, but I don't know if there are any books of it. Never heard that there's a book this kind of numerology. So it's an oral teaching, and it's the numerology that works with the wheel of life. So that is the reincarnation wheel on this planet. And what I do when somebody shows up in the practice, of course, I make notes and I talk a little bit. I want to know what their problem is and what their challenge is. I always write down the name, and underneath the name, the birth date. And that birth date has like 5 basic vibrations. It's your soul number.
Mm-hmm.
It's your, we call it the karmic number, or your challenge, your talents, the path that you should walk. Oh, that's the best for you to walk on, your path vibration, and your goal, life goal. And I always teach, because I teach numerology too, I always teach, don't start looking at your life goal. It will unfold if you work with the other 4.
Okay.
You don't have to work on that.
That makes sense.
Because then you bypass the other steps. So
Sure.
forget about it. Yeah, just observe once in a while what is changing in my life. Oh, I see stuff coming up. I see there's movement in my life, and I'm reaching my life goal. So basically, I only work with the soul number and the karmic number, because people come to my practice, they have a challenge, or they have a problem, or they have a disease that goes from one generation to the other, and they want to know what like the mental emotional cause of it is. Because mental, emotional, unresolved problems or trauma will show up at one point through the body. So that's my point of view. So I always look at the month of birth. And the month of birth has a certain number. So January is 1, February is 2. Now you can have a whole discussion about if the 9th is September, or if that should be 7th month, because 7th is 7. But we have this hypnotic information frame in which we work with January till December, as we've created it, as we are. So I work with karmic residue, I work with that. I work with what it is. And I use the karmic number, and that's what I'm focused on, because I know every number has a certain meaning. And if the number is like pure, then you don't have excesses like, let's say, being too verbal or not talk at all. It's about communication. So let's say somebody who was born in March, in the 3rd month, the number 3, 3, then I know it's about communication. And I know if they talk a lot, they don't really say anything, or they have difficulties to say something because they stutter, because they can't find words. So you always
Gotcha.
see
Yep.
karmically that there's like, let's say, a plus or a minus, too much or too little of the original pure energy of that number.
Mm-hmm.
So I always work with the karmic number, and I use the connection with the soul number to find out the vibration of their survival mechanism. And that's basically how I work with it. So if somebody shows up in my practice that is born in the 3rd month in March, I know I have to listen to everything that has to do with communication. Maybe there are secrets in the family, stuff like that. And it always shows up. So I don't guide my client there. I keep it in mind and I listen to it. So I know if I'm in a session, I have to ask a lot about what is not communicated or what is said in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So we can change that karmic residue into a power. Because there's something we mostly don't realize. The things we are stuck in used to be one of our great gifts, and it has gone wrong at some point. So for me to speak in public, I wasn't able to do it. I was dissociated. I was leaving. My body was doing it. I was gone.
Sure.
And I know what it was because I have had lives in which I spoke, and I've been a seer, or I've been a political person or whatever, and I was killed for my ideas, or I was killed for my knowledge, or I was killed by revealing secrets, or I was killed by knowing things that people were only thinking, and then I was communicating. So that was my challenge, and now I'm kind of able to do this podcast with you. So
that's great.
Still difficult. Yeah, it's still difficult, but I do it. It's getting better and better because I know it used to be my gift, but through trauma, it became my struggle. But once I can transform it, I can have this gift integrated again. And guess what? I have all the important big planets in the 3rd house, or in the 4th house, conjunct the Fucus. So it's all a lot of energy. So for me, I have to communicate. It's part of my code. But the challenge is to go beyond the dark feminine energy that was murdered, killed, that has used our information in the wrong way. Because we all were victims, but we all were perpetrators once.
Yes, right. And the balance of energy. There's been the positive and the negative, or the masculine and the feminine, or however you want to look at that.
Yeah.
There's that polarity within all of us. Yes.
So that's how I use numerology. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. So a lot of the things that you're saying just now resonated, but they resonate with me because you happen to pick numbers that do resonate with me, which was interesting. Yeah, completely. So first off, the way that I look at numerology, not the same way necessarily that you're looking at, because I don't have the experience of working with that wheel of life and that knowledge, but I have a little bit more of the traditional numerology background, where 3 represents the Trinity, or however you might refer to that, the spirit, masculine, feminine, or God, Father, Holy Spirit, however you want to look at that. But 3 also with the triangle, and being the first shape, the most basic shape that there can be. So all these different things with 3. And it's interesting that you're talking about the actual month being a number, because then if I look at a life path number, for example, based off of your birth date and year, well, I'm a 3. But then also, if I look at how you're looking at the month that you're born and what that month number is, well, I'm born in December. That's also a 3.
Also a 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like me, I'm born in December too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. And that makes sense. I kind of had a feeling that you're going to be a December, beginning of December sometime.
The 3rd of December. So I have a 3 and a 3. So my soul number is 3, but my challenge is also a 3.
Okay.
And that makes it so I always get problems with my throat. So I have a pain in my throat at the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so that explains some of the placements in your chart that you've said to me. I'm like, yeah, this sounds like a December type time period. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I was born the day after Christmas. I was actually born at like 1 o'clock in the morning on the 26th. So pretty much right after Christmas Day ended,
Yeah.
I was I was coming into the world the night of Christmas, but not till after midnight. So technically the 26th. So a lot of interesting things with that, and I've found so many different connections with the number 3, where that's also in my own chart. The third house is very dominant. So like, there's all these 3s in my coding. It's very, very interesting how that actually ends up working out. And I find that that has some type of a resonance or a synchronicity with people that also carry that 3 coding with them.
Yeah.
That there's just this kind of overarching understanding or similarities and things that happen throughout life and things you connect to that just seem to be mysterious, I guess is a short way to explain it, that are hard to understand and definitely challenging to deal with. But when you go through them instead of trying to, go around them and not actually work with them, it starts to make a lot more sense. I don't know if that's been kind of your experience as well.
Yeah. It's like,
Seems to be that that's the case.
yeah. It's like the owl. The owl is connected for me to 12, to the December, to the 12, like the last number of the karmic wheel, the wheel of life. Because before we die, before we make the transition, what do we need to see? And what's there in the dark before we go? What didn't we speak about? So the 12, karmically the 12, also refers to some kind of secrets, possibly in the family lineage, or some kind of things that are hidden. Mostly information or things that aren't being told or we're not supposed to come out. So that's the connection for me with the owl. It shows you, like, because in the 12, the end of the wheel, it gets dark, it gets winter, everything stops, and everything goes dark, quiet. And an owl is super quiet. They can sit in a tree and observe you without you knowing it. And before you know, they fly above your head and you don't hear them. The owl, it flies silently, you don't hear them. So there's like this dead silence. And what's there to find? What's there to hear? So to truly listen is sometimes a challenge. And guess what? I picked a job, career as a therapist, and I have to listen to my clients. But then I can listen and I put on my owl ears because I have to listen to the words they don't really say. It are always the little things that seem to go between words and lines and sentences that are the most important. And as soon as there's something important to hear, my hearing becomes big and it goes slow. So I know the owl is working through me because that's the words I have to listen to. And that's what I need to know. That's like the unconscious secrets of the clients. And that's something, that's my karmic number, but there's a big power in it. That's what I tried to explain with the 3 before. It's like when it's karmically suppressed, but when you work with it and it becomes available, it's like a big gift. It's like something that's yours, And within this whole karmic wheel stuff, this whole matrix we're in, we're not supposed to get back those gifts because it makes us too much superhuman almost compared to the robots and slaves that they want us to be.
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. I think that that's a huge thing for people to understand, and such a good point. And, I think that is not only such a good point, but I think that's also such a great point and culmination of this whole conversation that we can end on. And I hope that we can do this again in the future. If you're open to it, I've greatly appreciated your time, and everything that you've said and the things that you've brought up is so just beautiful and magical, and I resonate with so much of it, and a lot of it paints a new picture for me. And now I see why Isaac told me to reach out to you. And I'm like, okay, I will. I was like, I definitely will. And now I see what he was seeing from working with you and from conversations that I've had with him, and why he wanted me to do that. I'm like, okay, now I understand. Now I see what you were talking about, and it makes so much sense. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And so much information. I'm gonna have to go back and like listen to this like multiple times and take notes and be like, okay, wait, now what was that exactly? And yeah, so much to take from it. So I hope people have an opportunity to listen and to go back and listen again and reach out to me or to contact you to work with you and ask more questions, because I think there's so much more that we can really open up and really dig deep into. And I think if, we can do this again sometime and go into some of these things a little bit deeper, or kind of narrow down on one thing, that would be absolutely amazing. And just for anyone else that's listening, I think if you can reach out to Frederieke and follow her on social media and get involved and really take to heart a lot of the things that she's been talking about today, I think it'll help you so much. And is there anything else? I have a couple other questions before we close up, but is there anything else that you'd like to leave with people that is something that just, is coming to your mind that would be important to share?
Yeah, just allow yourself to be the most loving person that you are inside, because we all are. I'm so convinced of it. And just sink into that feeling and allow yourself to be, through all the things that the self-judgment or whatever, just allow yourself to go back to the core, love you for who you are, because we need everybody to be there to radiate it. Actually, it's pure love. Yeah, I think that's the only thing.
I love that. And that's so beautifully well said. So well said. And yeah, we definitely need more of that. And so the only other question I have for you is, the name of this podcast is Pluto and Capricorn. And I named it that because of the current transit of Pluto and what that means. So I'm curious to you and your perception of looking at that astrological transit. What does Pluto and Capricorn mean to you, or what does that represent?
Well, Pluto is, for me, it's the owl. That's one of my biggest protectors in total. So the owl is Pluto is about the truth. And it's painful to go through the truth, especially when it's the truth within yourself. But it's a dark planet. It's like dark energy. But I would invite everybody to embrace it and go into the deepest, darkest caves within yourself to find the truth about you as a person. And I think collectively, we just have to face it. Like everything that's going wrong, we point to politicians and whatever, but we are the one who is supporting them. We are the one who don't say stop. So that's back to yourself again. I think that's where it starts. If you start to acknowledge the truth within yourself, it doesn't matter if it's ugly. Just see it. Like the owl looks into the dark, like Pluto says, just shine a light on the darkest spot. I think that's what we're supposed to do. So worldwide, collectively, there's a big change going on. There's so much stuff coming to the open. Like so many hidden things are being exposed that are wrong. And we like to point at it, but start with ourselves. I think that's what's going on right now. We have this Pluto thing shifting from Sag and Capricorn off and on, I think. At the moment, it's in Sag, I believe.
Yeah, I think, it's like a little retrograde.
Yeah. So it gives us the opportunity to go back to what we thought we know. Like wisdom is only the wisdom you know unless you grow, and then there's more wisdom showing up. And somehow, to me, it feels like we get the opportunity with Pluto. Okay, so you thought this was it? Go back. So what's wise to do with what you know now? Because we're going to create a new paradigm and a new way of structuring this world. So we have to check, like, what we thought we knew, is it still right? What we know now, how does that combine together, and what is the wisdom we get out of it? And with that, we're going to build something new. And I think that could be an explanation about what Pluto is right now. And I love you. I love it. You called it Pluto. It's great. It's perfect. It goes with this
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it's the Pluto return for us here in the United States, and it's like,
All right. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, the nation here, we were born as a country, 76. That's the last time Pluto entered into Capricorn. So it's like here we are.
Wow.
It's a Pluto return here.
Yeah. And
It's
I've visited your country a couple of times, of course. And to be honest, when I enter into the United States and I look around, to me it's surreal. It's like a dream, but it doesn't feel like reality. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but it doesn't say I don't like it or it's not beautiful or everything, but it has a certain veil that is not. I sense it. It's like a bit of an illusionary veil, and if you look through it, there's a lot that has to change. It has to transform, and that's probably what's going on. Because I think your country has, if you go way back, has beautiful ceremonies and rituals from so many
Oh, yeah.
different tribes and so many people, and also new people who came in. That can be all in peace and shared. It's gonna create a beautiful, let's say, new world. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a pretty spot on assessment. There's definitely a lot of potential and a lot of change needed too. So I think that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all
Well,
there. The
thank you so
opportunity is
much.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I've learned so much, and you've given me so much to think about. And I hope people can also do the same thing and kind of go back and listen again and think about these things and really let it kind of open them up and be their authentic selves. And that's really what the world needs more of now is, like you said, more love and more authentic expression of who we really are and looking into those cosmic codes of seeing who we are and healing, everything about ourselves and letting that out, not being afraid to jump into that. And so I appreciate your insight, and the way that you word things is very understandable. And I really, really appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your perspective and the things that you're doing to help us as people grow and to become the best versions of ourselves we can be. So that means a lot to us. And yeah,
Likewise,
keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. No, thank you so much for having me. And I love this conversation. We can do it again if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do it.
It's not just me asking you, but you asking me. It's like the interaction. I love that. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's my mission is to just get as much information out to people as possible. So in whatever way makes that happen, then that's the best way to do it.
Thank you so much. Great work. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to express my gratitude to Frederieke van der Lijn for sharing so much love and wisdom with us today. I feel extremely fortunate to have the privilege of speaking to people like her that are doing such wonderful healing work. The amount of love that radiates from people like Frederieke is truly an amazing thing to feel. We're in this world at a time that has so many opportunities for us to be pulled into negativity and judgment. And it's encouraging to meet and interact with people who are so uplifting and positive. The work of healing and growing is needed in the world, and we are truly blessed to have people that are here to be guides and teachers for the collective. If we are willing to be vulnerable and look at the areas of our lives that need to be nurtured with the true medicine of unconditional love, we can heal our wounds and become the authentic expression of the divine source we are here to be. This is the way. Please remember to check the show notes for all the links to follow Frederieke and myself. Thank you for joining me this week, and I'll see you again next week on another episode of Pluto and Capricorn.